You ever find yourself just absolutely furious over something tiny? I mean, completely losing it? It's a feeling we all know, but what's really going on in our heads when that happens? Well, today, we're going to dive into the psychology of frustration and conflict to figure out what our personal breaking point really is. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? You go to get a glass of water, the tap is dry, and bam, you feel this insane wave of anger. Or maybe your internet cuts out during a super important call and you just want to throw your laptop clean out the window. Why? Why does something so small trigger such a massive reaction? Well, the answer isn't just, you're in a bad mood. It's actually a very specific psychological process. And it all starts with a feeling we're all very familiar with: frustration. But we're going to look at it in a more scientific way. See, in psychology, frustration isn't just a vague feeling of being annoyed. It's defined as the direct emotional result of having a goal blocked. It's a straight-up cause and effect thing. An objective gets thwarted, and your brain responds with frustration. Simple as that. The whole process is basically a four-step chain reaction. Let's break it down. 1, you have a goal. It can be huge or tiny, doesn't matter. 2, you run into an obstacle. 3, your path is now blocked. And 4, that emotional state that follows, yep, that's frustration. And here's what's really fascinating. Those intense emotions, like anger, bitterness, or even despair, they aren't actually frustration itself. They are the result of it. They're the emotional fallout that comes after your goal gets blocked. It's a subtle but really important distinction. Okay, so if this process is basically the same for everyone, why do some people totally lose it over a dry tap while others can handle major life disasters with, relative calm? This is where we get into the idea of a personal breaking point. Each of us has something called a frustration threshold. Think of it like a pressure valve in your mind. Once the stress of a blocked goal builds up and pushes you past that line, that's when things happen. You might lash out or just completely shut down. So someone with a high threshold, they can take on a ton of stress before they hit their limit. They're resilient. But someone with a low threshold might feel totally overwhelmed really fast, even by pretty minor stuff. So take a second. Where do you think you fall on that spectrum? I love this analogy. Think of your frustration threshold as your psychological immune system. Just like your physical immune system fights off germs, a strong psychological immunity protects you from the toxic effects of stress and frustration. It's your mental armor. So how does this immunity even develop? Well, a lot of it gets shaped way back in childhood. And interestingly, two opposite extremes can be equally damaging. On one side, you have excessive spoiling. The kid gets everything they want, instantly. This teaches them that they should never have to face an obstacle. But on the other side, excessive harshness and constant criticism can also crush a kid's resilience. Both paths can lead to the same outcome: a low frustration threshold as an adult. This quote just nails it, doesn't it? A healthy, managed dose of no, of dealing with small, survivable frustrations, it's kind of like a vaccine. It builds up that psychological immunity, teaching a child how to cope with the world, because life is full of obstacles. Now, what happens when the obstacle isn't something external, like a dead phone battery, but something internal? Sometimes the frustration comes from the sheer struggle of making a tough choice. And this is a really unique and intense kind of frustration that we call conflict. There are basically 3 main types here. First, you've got approach. This is the easy one. Choosing between 2 things you want, like your 2 favorite restaurants for dinner. Stress level, pretty low. Then you have approach avoidance. This is one single option that has both good and bad sides, like a dream job offer that's in a city far from your family. The stress here is way higher. And finally, the absolute toughest one, avoidance. This is being forced to choose between 2 bad options, the classic lesser of 2 evils. This one, as you can imagine, creates the most stress and frustration of all. So, what can we actually do about all this? Is our threshold just fixed? Well, the great news is that it is absolutely not set in stone. We can actively work to raise it. The first thing to get is that your ability to handle frustration isn't the same every single day. It goes up and down. You're not always working with a full tank of resilience. And there are some usual suspects that drain your tank temporarily. We can call them the 5 S's: lack of sleep, too much substance like caffeine, being sick or in pain, low blood sugar from not eating, or major life stress. Any one of these can lower your tolerance, but the real kicker is that they stack up. Just being aware of them is a huge first step in managing your reactions. Okay, so managing your daily state is one thing, but if you want to build a fundamentally higher threshold for the long haul, that takes a little bit of deeper work on the foundation. Think about it like this. Your psychological energy is like a reservoir of water. Every unresolved issue from your past, psychologists call this unfinished business, is like a tiny hole in the bottom of that reservoir. It's constantly, slowly draining your energy. So when a new frustration comes along, your tank is already half empty. So if you want to raise your threshold, you've got to patch those holes. So step 1, address that unfinished business. Step 2, develop new skills so fewer things feel like giant, impossible obstacles. 3, work on changing your perspective so you can see setbacks as learning opportunities. And finally, 4, build a strong support network. You don't have to face all this stuff alone. So all this leaves us with one final thought to take with you. Now that you understand this a bit better, think about your day ahead. What's one small, predictable frustration you're probably going to face? And how can you consciously choose to handle it just a little bit differently, taking that first step to building your own psychological immunity?